Hey everyone, welcome to Be the Change. My name is Lily Mott, and today's episode is about how change comes when you find the middle ground. My guest this week is Emmaryn Leuzzi, and she is a climate advocate and a current PhD candidate from Ghana. I am excited to share this conversation with you, so without further ado, let's get started with this episode featuring Emmaryn Leuzzi.
So my name is Emmaryn Leuzzi, and I am a climate advocate. I originally have my bachelor's in sociology, as well as my master's in philosophy and sociology. But I'm currently having a PhD in sustainable development and diplomacy. And as a professional climate advocate, what I really focus on is in climate education, mainly because I believe that the first, step to tackling the climate crisis begins with awareness, and that is what climate education is actually about. In our part of the world, Africa, mainly in Ghana, climate education is inaccessible, and moreover, non-science students do not have little to no idea about what climate change or action is all about. So, my personal mission is to educate these young ones on the nuances about climate change as well as climate action. So what I do is to just do advocacy and build on more projects concerning climate change. I also have a bit of fashion as well as art. So as I already said, I have 2 degrees in sociology. So I originally was into human and leadership organizational skills, what we previously called human resources. And from part-time, I used to volunteer in these environmental clubs and being their brand ambassadors and all of that. But as time went on, I realized that I needed to do more than just be a face of an environmental brand or going occasionally to plant trees. There was something in me that was actually burning. So I decided to explore using the tool of pageantry to get more people on board. But that wasn't enough for me. I felt that I wasn't making as much impact as I would do. So people usually do get confused. What is this person who's always putting a hand in debt doing? What has she got to do with fashion or modeling? This is how I had to blend it because I felt that pageantry couldn't give me what I really wanted to do. So I decided to go full time into environment and climate action. I took up jobs as a project lead in environment and climate action, where I did most of my advocacy and then enacted a lot of projects within this past few years. I hope this is just enough for everyone listening to know a little bit about what I do and what I stand for.
Absolutely. I think that was a great introduction, and there is so much that I'm excited to talk about with you. So, I would love to go a little bit deeper into the background that you were telling me about. Can you tell me more about what motivated you to get started as a climate advocate?
I would say it was a bit of, from a personal point of view, was all about passion, some sensation burning in you, as well as a risk. Because as I said, I went to school to be in the world of work in the corporate world, and I already have a connection to nature, because my parents are migrants. So we moved to Accra, the city of Accra. We did have the purest form of nature, and gradually we saw the construction and the bad behaviors of let me put bad behaviors in quotes, of people moving in, polluting the environment, and it caused health hazards and even like psychological issues. So I took it upon myself as well as my family. We do our home gardening, practicing sustainable lifestyle choices. And then I decided to try to join organizations to, help them with their little projects. That was back in the office when I was more like an a human resource manager. But then I had to always steal time to go and then volunteer. So I think the turning point for me, it's quite strange when I say it, but it happened within a certain period of my life where I had a very bad health condition, and I was in my lowest point, and I said, okay, so if I were to pass away, would I be happy with what I have done so far in my life? And what would have been my dream job if I didn't have to look for money or be compelled to work along my degrees in school at a university? What would I really want to do ideally? What would I call the dream job? Yes, the dream job is to be on the big platforms, whatever it comes with it. But then the dream job is actually making significant impact in people. So after recovery, yes, I was in the high office having all of that, and I realized that okay, so when I was quite in my low times, I realized that I hadn't actually done what I really wanted to do. Who knows if I'm going to have more time on earth. So it's when I realized that, okay, so instead of stealing time with my corporate work, I could just go mainstream into climate advocacy. And it was actually a great risk because I had to succeed in it. I had to, I was now out of the university and I had to build my career. And I was willing to take that big step. It was quite challenging, but I didn't notice the challenges because I was quite passionate. I was into it, full time, mainstream, and it gave me a sense of joy, a sense of accomplishment. Um, I love that. I love the remarks, the feedbacks that I hear from the indigenous people, and that actually has kept me till now. And I would say that I'm proud of what I have done so far, and that I'm proud that I took that big step to move from the corporate world into environmental advocacy, which volunteering really doesn't really pay the bills, but it's something that I'm really proud of, and I'm glad that I did take that big step.
Yeah, that is great. And I'm so glad that you took that step too. I think that's a really inspiring story as far as how you got to this point. So thank you for sharing that. And I would also love to know a little bit more about how your studies go together with your activism. Can you tell me more about what you're studying as you're working towards your PhD right now?
Yes, so I'm currently into sustainable development and diplomacy. And the reason I went into this field is to try to get more expertise, knowledge when it comes to achieving the SDG goals. And as an activist, I realized that although we do grassroots advocacy, it could only be implemented from the top, although it's more like a bottom-top approach. I realized that I needed, should I say, professional, yeah, more like a professional expertise in trying to understand the dynamics when it comes to geopolitics, when it comes to policy formulation, when it comes to evaluating policies. All these things are what actually makes every advocate's work easier or more complex. Because if the institutions in charge are not going to cooperate, do not respond to the demands that advocates do on the lower level, everything goes to be a waste. So I needed to really do. I just started. This is my first year. I've been into the studies for 4 to 5 months now. Yes. So the diplomacy is gonna eventually, when I'm not able to go down to the grassroots with placards and demanding that government inculcate climate change or climate education into the syllabus. I would love to be at the table where we could negotiate or formulate or implement policies, and this would actually make the works of other activists, younger ones, or those who are still going to be in there, more, you know, quite easy, quite flexible, because everything that we do here, if the people who are in charge of implementing or creating the policies do not buy into our ideas or advocacy, it really does not do much. And I do not believe in radical approach, which is why I combine this diplomacy just to try to understand the language and see how both institutions and individuals could meet halfway to accomplish, mutual goals.
That is so interesting. And I love that your education is tied into the work that you're doing as an activist and it's tied into the change that you want to see in the world as well. I would also love to know, throughout your time as a climate advocate so far, are there any pieces of advice or maybe words of wisdom that you've picked up and that have really stuck with you or kind of are always just in your head? Does anything like that come to mind for you?
Absolutely. What keeps ringing in my mind each time is impact, trying to make impact. And with the works of advocates or activists, it's not just about getting the numbers or rebelling. It's more about impact. And I stick to that because this is what actually keeps me moving. As long as we are making impacts, we are changing lives positively. This is what actually I stand for. I stand by this. The word impact is what keeps ringing in my mind each time. So if there is any activity that I have to embark on gathering people, the question is, what kind of impact are you making? Is it just for social media? Is it just to put pressure on government? And for what reason? What are the causes? So the impact is what is the underlying, the more like the blueprints, more like the spirit that drives this trajectory that I am treading on. So it's more about impact. And moreover, I got surprised. Usually when you do stuff you think people do not notice, you get invited to events. We go for conferences based on environment, natural resources, and you meet people of your age, people even quite older, come to you and tell you that they've been following you and they're so glad that I did something or that I had presented a particular request to the government, and this was the result of it. And I know I'm jumping the gun, but I'll take this opportunity to talk about one of my most impactful activities. It really doesn't sound impactful when it comes to professionals, when it comes to project managers in environment and climate action. But this has been the most impactful project. And this project was quite a tough one. People actually thought it was quite easy. I remember during my role as a team lead, I wanted to let the government know that we have to inculcate climate education in our syllabus. And the method of doing this was to go and not to protest, but just to march in front of all the dignitaries during our Independence Day celebrations. So when it comes to Independence Day celebrations in Ghana, we have this stakeholders coming from all across the continent and even in the diaspora coming to witness this. And the one task was just for us to march and tell them that we needed climate education, because usually independence celebration is for praising our leaders, being happy that yes, historically we are no longer under certain bondage. But I had to go and then do this, which was really a big risk because I went through a lot of ministries trying to get approval to do this, and it was futile. I remember my boss back then told me to take that project out of the program lineup and that he wasn't going to approve of it because if I don't, our independence celebration was in March. If in 3 months I don't get approval from the ministries, then there's no way I was going to pull that up. But I was quite bent on it. I kept following and following, went to states in Ghana, trying to get approval from the people in charge of, allowing people to come and march and demonstrate in the country. So we had setbacks from, so many months that it was 3 weeks to time, and I still didn't have the approval. And I wasn't willing to, I was actually not bent on calling it off because I had planned it the previous year and I was only 3 weeks away to implementing it. I finally got the opportunity to speak to people who, and that's the interesting thing about pitching ideas. People who you think are not responsible for this kind of things were the ones who helped me. There was one soldier who helped me, bring in my volunteers with the placards. I had one other member who was just a friend to one of the ministers. And that actually within 3 weeks, everything went on smoothly. We had to gather new people. Even our placards wasn't ready, but I was very sure to not make this a radical movement. The approach I took was to praise the government for what they have done all over the years. And then I had to beseech them to inculcate climate education into the syllabus of young people in elementary school. That was what actually caught their attention. And the good thing was that pictures of my projects were featured on the presidential page. It was featured on our government Environment and Protection Agency because I also had to, praise them before I put before them my request. And this is what actually drawn me into studying diplomacy because we don't always have to be radical, causing chaos just to make impact is really not it doesn't really sound well. So you have to learn the tricks of diplomacy and not give up. If you really do have something burning in your heart and you think that you must do it, you should follow that burning sensation, that innate drive that forces you to do that. But then be careful of not also damaging another institution or damaging the peace. So fast forward, yes, after we got featured and all of that, I also had opportunity to be invited by the Environment EPA, Ghana's EPA, that's the Environment Protection Agency, to speak to people about what I meant by inculcating climate education. I had that opportunity to do that. I made a presentation on demystifying climate education in Ghana and Africa as a whole. And I would call myself a field artist as when I was younger, I was, good at drawing and painting, but I had to focus on my studies. So I threw away the paint brushes. So during that time, I had to, make a painting. So I'm not really a good artist. I still paint like I'm a toddler. So it's what I did, and I presented that, and that actually won me an award. I had an award from the ministry that year. That was last year. And subsequently, people reached out to me to, try to speak to their students about, sustainable lifestyle choices. I was engaged in our local conference of the youth and many, many other more opportunities arose from just this single match that I had so many difficulties that I didn't even have support from the organization that I was in. And so this has been the most impactful because aside being honored and having all that speech, the ministry actually sat down to start to design a syllabus. And I was also invited to know if this actually suits our Ghanaian culture because one thing that I stand for is that despite all the global trends of climate change and climate action, I want people of Ghana, especially the children, to understand that it's not just another foreign course. It's not just a program or a subject that you have to study to pass your exams and then you are gone. This is something that should be in our DNA, should be a lifestyle choice, trying to protect the environment, managing waste properly, saving energy, all these kind of things should be something that we live by and not just, passing math exams and then forgetting about algebra after you've done. So that has been my main focus on it.
Thank you so much for sharing all about those different projects. And I think this is just great work that you're doing. So I'm really excited to follow along with everything that you do from here because it seems like you're really just getting started. So I have one more question for you. Lots of young people want to create change and want to make a difference, but they may not know how to get started with that work. What advice do you have for those people who may be listening?
Okay, thank you, Lily. So, what I would say is that first and foremost, to all students listening now, is to get you could take a paper and note and just write down what you want to do. It could be scattered ideas. You want to make impact, or you want to change some a world around you, a particular thing. What you could start is first to get to understand yourself, get to understand what exactly it is that you want to do. It's all right if the ideas are not definite, they are not well defined, but just listen to yourself and then get to know what exactly you want. Find you could go ahead to find organizations that do a similar thing that you would love to do. And the thing with organizations or clubs in schools or societies and memberships that are around is that they help to define the innate passion or the spirit that is in you that you want to make a change in your society. So finding that organization actually helps to shape or modify your ideas. And subsequently, with time, if you do resonate with the values of these organizations, you could stay in and make better or huge impact. If it doesn't really suit well with you, you could go ahead to find other organizations or even form a club on your own. But I would always say that you should stick to rules. You could be radical in a very peaceful way, but try to understand the institutional regulations and guidelines. And if you really want to make a change, and from there you could have listening ears. And I'm saying this because of my background as African and as Ghanaian. The way to try to have the listening ears of people in authorities to first to take the boxes that they have provided, and then you could have the table to negotiate. Usually most activists try to throw away the guidelines, just go radical, but that also causes a lot of problems. So stemming from my background, I think it can be replicated in any part of the world, whether in the US, in Europe, or Asia. Try to find a middle ground. When all else fails, then you know the button to pull. But first, you should keep to yourself and know what do you want to do. Write them down. Keep meditating on what exactly you want to do. Try to make as little impact as you may do. It may go a long way, and gradually find organizations that are well structured to help bring out the potential in changing the world around you. Thank you.
As I said in our conversation, I am so excited to follow along with all of Emmaryn's work because I really do think she is just getting started with making an impact in Ghana, across Africa, and around the world. I really appreciated the advice that Emmaryn shared at the end of our conversation too, about finding the middle ground and making sure that you listen to people. I think that listening to other people and trying to understand where they're coming from is so important, especially as billions of people are thinking and talking about politics and heading to the ballot box throughout this year. Whether it's finding common ground with your government and following the procedures they put in place to make change, as Emmaryn discussed, or trying to engage in a productive, respectful conversation with someone who falls on the other side of the political aisle, there are so many examples of how change comes when you find the middle ground. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and you can find Emmaryn on Instagram, and I included that link in the description of the episode. If you want to talk about anything I mentioned, please reach out to me by email at lily@bethechangepodcast.org or on Instagram at Be The Change Media Network. I am working on expanding Be The Change Media Network, which means bringing you more inspiring stories from amazing guests. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave the podcast a rating and a comment because it will help these stories to reach, educate, and inspire more people. And I would also love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Tune in for my next episode, but until then, be the change you wish to see in the world. Bye, guys.